Hello, my name is Tony. The plethora of disaster movies in the 70s slung the label around a bit, to the extent that some films that weren't strictly deserving of that descriptor got trolled into the same net and fairly pigeonholed. Flicks like Juggernaut, The 2-Minute Warning, and indeed John Frankenheimer's Black Sunday were fated to be associated with the genre, which ran the risk of them being greeted with a sigh and, oh, it's just another disaster movie, when they were in fact closer to being high-concept suspense thrillers. To my mind, a disaster movie is a disaster movie because a disaster happens and the rest of the film is taken up by the cast of characters dealing with the disaster that has disastrously befallen as they fight to survive or prevail. Technically, non-disaster movies that get mistaken for disaster movies focus on a disaster about to come to pass and a cast of characters, some of who spend the runtime trying to avert the disaster so that the disaster isn't disastrous. Full-on disaster movies would be The Poseidon Adventure, the Airport series, The Towering Inferno, Earthquake, and in more ways than one, The Swarm. Now I suddenly realise I don't know where I'm going with this because it's pretty much irrelevant in the here and now and doesn't have any bearing on this review specifically, so I'll shut the fuck up about it and move the fuck on. Frankenheimer's Black Sunday is not to be confused with Mario Bava's debut horror flick from 1960, with which it shares a title and absolutely nothing else. Based on the novel by Thomas Harris, it takes inspiration from the terrorist slaughter of Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics in 1972. The attack was carried out by the Palestinian Black September group, and they're the antagonists here. Embittered and borderline psychotic Vietnam vet Lander, Bruce Dern, is out for revenge against the good old US of A for his treatment. He was tortured by the Kong as a POW and court-martialed on his return. Thank you for your service. His dream is to express his discontent by committing suicide and taking as many civilians with him as possible. He makes a living as a contractor, piloting blimps above American football stadiums for TV news channels. Dahlia, Martha Keller, is a Black September operative and Lander's lover. He's pretty much enthralled to her and she manipulates him effortlessly. In retaliation for supporting the Israeli regime, she aims to perpetrate an atrocity on American soil. The plan is to pack a blimp with crap loads of plastic explosives, land it in a crowded football stadium during the Super Bowl, and detonate the bomb. The bomb will contain 250,000 sharpened steel flechettes, which will be driven like razor-sharp bullets into the crowd, causing catastrophic injury and loss of life. First off, though, the film opens with a raid on a Black September safe house in Beirut, led by Mossad agent Kabakov Robert Shaw. I don't know why they call it a safe house, as safe seems to be the last thing it fucking is. The directive is shoot to kill, but we see Kabakov come upon Dahlia in the shower, as she's unarmed, defenseless, naked, wet, and a girl. She spares her life and she escapes. In retrospect, fucking big mistake. After exfiltrating, Kabakov finds a recorded message in which Dahlia explains the motivation behind the planned terrorist attack. The statement was intended to be released after the event. Details are scant, but it's clear that some heavy shit is about to go down. Cute chick, bare ass naked in the shower or not, Kabakov should have shot her in the head. Ah well, we must all live and learn. Kabakov and his colleague Robert, Stephen Keats, hit the US and start to work with senior FBI agent Corley, Fritz Weaver, to establish what the plot is, identify the perpetrators, and hopefully neutralize the threat. The clock is ticking though, and as they gradually piece things together, realizing that the Super Bowl is the target, it may be too late to prevent Dahlia and Lander from realizing their nefarious destiny. When Black Sunday was made, it seemed unthinkable that a terrorist attack of such cataclysmic scale and cost to human life could be successfully orchestrated on US soil. Little did anyone know. Subsequent real-world events retrospectively lend something of a sense of increased probability to the events depicted in the film, reconfiguring the unthinkable into a more readily entertained proposition. This is heightened by the documentary or procedural feel that Frankenheimer uses at times when the focus is on the way in which security forces are briefed, mobilized, and deployed. It's only in the film's climax that the illusion of grim authenticity is fractured somewhat. We'll get to that issue. John Frankenheimer had a flair for action and orchestrating moments of high tension, and there are plenty of set pieces showcased case in both. The body count starts with the assault on the Black September base at the outset and escalates throughout, distributed across bad guys, good guys, and innocent bystanders aplenty up until the end. People get burned all over the place. Notably murderous is when Dahlia's commander Facile Bekim Femu attempts to escape from security forces in an extended foot chase sequence, resulting in multiple shootings and fatalities. In these moments and in his handling of the crowd and Super Bowl scenes, Frankenheimer is in his element and at the top of his game. Additionally, Black Sunday gives us one of the most memorable and definitive examples of black humour ever seen in a modern action thriller. Lander and Dahlia fly into the Mojave Desert to a small landing strip to test out a miniature version of the explosive device. They're surprised by the presence of the caretaker of the rickety wooden aircraft hangar. Using the cover of being photographers sent by a consortium that wants to invest in the area, they set the device up in the hangar, Lander telling the caretaker that it's a new sort of camera. Lander has him pose, smiling inanely with his pipe in his mouth to have his picture taken for scale. The look on his face as the bomb goes off, blasting flechettes in all directions, is absolutely fucking priceless. Well, it made me laugh. What do you mean, sick fuck? It is funny, okay? The icing on the cake, though, is when Bruce Dern's character enthuses over his handiwork, marvelling at the perfect symmetry of the projectiles. Filmed on the inside of the hangar, thousands of sunbeams lance through the holes made in the structure. So perfectly captured and directed, it is the moment when Frankenheimer turns death and destruction into a timeless example of visual art. Beautiful and macabre all at once. Wonderful. As Dahlia and Lander fly away, the hangar burns behind them, the work of art now a victim of conflagration. No one else will ever see it. Heading that way. Robert Shaw, hot property after Jaws, is excellent as Kabakov, a man who has spent his adult life hunting and killing others, his reputation one of icy ruthlessness, who is now growing jaded and hesitant, wondering what it has all been for. Racked with guilt over his mistake in not killing Dahlia, he is driven to stop her. It's a physically demanding role, he does a lot of running and jumping, and clearly a lot of his own stunts. Shaw seldom fails to deliver, and he's no different here, burning with energy and steely resolve. Bruce Dern was well versed in playing disaffected oddballs, and it's intriguing that his character draws more focus than that of Shaw's protagonist. Frankenheimer spends time establishing the psychological credentials of a traumatized and damaged man who has been rejected by his wife, his children, and his country, and hung out to dry. The mask he wears at work, that of a personable and capable blimp pilot, slips alarmingly in other circumstances, revealing a tangled mass of paranoid psychosis and seismic emotional instability. One of his most accomplished performances, and most definitely not your stereotypical villain. Which brings me on to Swiss actress Marta Keller. At the time, her performance as Dahlia grew criticism from mostly male critics as lacking in power, charisma and personality. This is another case of whatever they were watching wasn't the same as what I was watching. I thought she delivered a very skilled and nuanced portrayal of another damaged soul with a worldview distorted and radicalized by adverse life events. When Kabakov's opposite number, Palestinian Colonel Riot Walter Gotel, lists her appalling treatment at the hands of the Israelis in a dossier he is supplying under duress, he finishes with the accusation, "You created her." Keller excels in embodying these elements, ruthless in her focus and methods of manipulating and controlling Lander, yet revealing the ambiguity of their relationship, hinting that in some strange way she empathizes with and cares about him. Ultimately, they're both monsters, but undoubtedly human ones. I thought Keller was great, massively misrepresented by the critics of the time, and an asset to the film, just as she was in Marathon Man. Frankenheimer doesn't seek to sympathise with the terrorists though, just backfill some insight and understanding into their motivations. They may have been innocents once, but not anymore. Dahlia has no conscience about trying to infiltrate a hospital disguised as a nun to kill Kabakov. She is interrupted by Robert, who she coldly dispatches with a lethal injection. Later, we witness her shooting the harmless blimp pilot Farley, Tom McFadden, with casual precision and absolute dispassion. She's no shrinking violet. And Lander is just as thoughtlessly cruel, setting up the caretaker to be blown into oblivion, taking down anyone who gets in the way of his hijacking of the blimp. His self-absorption eclipses all consideration for any other human life. They are monsters, make no mistake. What else we get for our money is a fine score by John Williams, also on an incredible roll after Jaws and Star Wars. It's not his most immediate or grandstanding work, but good nonetheless, infused with restless, stabbing energy. Director of photography John A. Alonso lends Chinatown and combines handsome Hollywood sweep with some kinetic visual grit to accentuate that high-res docudrama look. The screenplay, 3 credits, all with some pedigree, is by Ernest Lehman, The Sound of Music, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Kenneth Ross, The Day of the Jackal, The Odessa File, and Ivan Moffat, Giant and the Heroes of Telemark. It's a pretty taut and robust beast. Black Sunday is a big, smart, intelligent and powerful action thriller handled with directorial aplomb by John Frankenheimer. It's gripping stuff that spends 2 hours plus constructing a tense, nail-biting narrative leading to its finale. And for me, that's the exact moment when it falls apart, the end game. Lander and Dahlia have scrabbled frantically to get control of the blimp and install the bomb. They fly it into the packed stadium pursued by Kabakov and Corley in a helicopter. And suddenly, after all that carefully crafted semi-realistic action, it's a James Bond movie. Kabakov locks eyes with Dahlia as he machine guns the blimp cockpit, shredding her and Lander, destroying the detonation device. However, as the blimp descends into the stadium, causing panic, Lander lives long enough to light a secondary fuse, which is the old villain standby and cliche of a taper burning down to a stick of dynamite. Kabakov is winched from the helicopter onto the blimp, where he grapples with a big rubber hook, struggling to attach it to the wayward airship. He rolls around on the very plastic-looking surface of the blimp, managing to get the hook attached. The helicopter drags it out to sea like a big fish on a big rubber hook as the fuse burns down even further. Kabakov then struggles to free the big rubber hook and get winched clear as the blimp explodes, sending its death-dispensing cargo of flying flechettes harmlessly into the water. Right, this finale all looks dreadful. The back projection is so fucking awful it really is jarring, ruining suspension of disbelief in the most brutal of ways. Frankenheimer tries to use editing to cover up the visual flaws of the blimp's descent into the stadium as the crowds run in panic mode. It's impossible to disguise the blimp is now obviously a mocked up hollow nose cone section suspended above the fleeing spectators and looking seriously fucking faked. And all the Bond-style heroics of dangling from a winch with a very inauthentic rubber hook on the end of it isn't compatible with the earlier tone and content of the film. The move from serious live action to cartoon capers is a damaging jolt and impacts adversely on the credibility of the film overall. Much as I hate to say it, if this was the way they wanted to go, employing the services of Industrial Light and Magic might have at least made it look convincing. And no, it didn't really look much better at the time when we didn't have advanced CGI to compare it with. It always looked bad. My only other criticism is it's too long. At 2.5 hours, trimming by about 30 minutes would have made it a pacier, leaner affair and increased the punch and impact of its mostly excellent action sequences. Putting that aside, Black Sunday is a thoughtful and moderately provocative political action thriller that most definitely isn't a disaster movie. So if you're on the lookout for one of those, don't be misled. If you're prepared to tolerate its flaws and foibles, and you maybe have an appreciation for director Frankenheimer, it fits comfortably into the upper middle tier of his body of work, and you might just, like me, find it a satisfying distraction and worthwhile watch every once in a while. Thank you for your time and attention. I am indebted to you for both. If you want to, hit like, don't like, leave a comment, or consider subscribing. Or you could check out my Patreon page to get early access to content and or keep this channel in the manner to which it is accustomed. I'm considering what to do next, and when I consider that I've done considering it, I'll move on and do it. Until then, pilgrims, take good care of yourselves. Shalom.